If you want showy plants with tropical vibes but easy to care for ones, then Aglaonemas are perfect. I'm going to run through the origins and care tips to help your Aglaonemas thrive, plus how to propagate them so you can grow your Aglaonema collection for free. Aglaonemas are native to tropical regions across countries in Southeast Asia. They have been introduced to other warmer climates as well, and they've been houseplants since around the 1800s, and they've become really popular ever since. There are loads of varieties available that come in all different colours, shapes and sizes, so there is something for whatever aesthetic that you might be going for with your houseplant collection, or you might be trying to collect lots of different ones to add lots of variety to your collection. Aglaonemas are also known as the Chinese evergreen plant and even the poison dart plant, which I find fascinating, and it's because of the sap, which is toxic and can be an irritant to skin, so be careful if you do have one if you're pruning it or taking cuttings, or wear gloves if you do happen to have sensitive skin. And despite being quite showy plants with bright colours and wonderful variegation, they are very easy to care for plants, so they are good beginner plants. They tolerate low light, they will forgive occasionally for getting to water them. They do, however, like some consistency when it comes to some elements of their care, so I'm going to run through that next so you can help your Aglaonemas thrive. So I've brought out this big Aglaonema for the care tips, and as you can see, this one has huge leaves compared to the last ones that I was holding up just a minute ago, and this one has a new leaf on the way, so I'm intrigued to see how big this plant will actually get, this variety will get, with the right care needs. So let's run through that now. So I'll start with water. So when it comes to watering, little and often is a good rule of thumb with these plants. So they do like to have some moisture in the soil, but you can let the top part of the soil dry between watering, so just check it with your fingers before watering and then give it a little top up as and when it needs it. You can let them, if you forget to water, it will be forgiving, and if you let the soil dry out completely, just give it a top up when you remember to. It might show you that it needs water by drooping, for example, but just don't leave it underwatered for an extended period of time, which can then damage the plant as it would with any plant being underwatered. What these are actually prone to is issues from overwatering, so if you let them sit in damp soil or soil with excess water for a period of time, then it can cause issues like root rot or damage and discoloration to the leaves. So try to avoid giving them too much water, or make sure they've got good drainage, and remove any excess water after they've taken up what they needed, and then you should have happy and healthy Aglaonema plants. And that leads nicely onto the soil. We're talking about drainage, but we want to get that balance between drainage and moisture retention. So I think the focus really is on the drainage with these plants. As I mentioned, overwatering, it can be an issue. So I would make sure that I've got some perlite or grit mixed in with some peat-free compost, and then a little bit of coconut coir maybe, or moss, something that will add to that moisture retention. But my main focus will be on drainage with the soil, also making sure that the soil isn't compacted around the plant and it's still fairly loose, so the plant is firm but the soil is loose, so there's still aeration around the roots and it still aids that drainage. So when it comes to lighting, in their natural habitat these usually grow under canopies of trees, so are often in shaded positions with filtered or dappled light. We want to try and replicate that, so the best light level for these is indirect. So put them in a spot in your home where it gets indirect light, and these should be happy. The ones with the brighter colours or brighter types of variegation will likely need a bit more light, so maybe a bright indirect spot for these. And the ones that are the darker green leaves, then they are okay with indirect light and even lower light levels. As I said, they're lower light tolerable plants. So these are great options if you've got spots in your home that have that indirect light level or even lower light levels that other plants can't go in because they need that brighter light. These are great to add some greenery to those areas. Avoid bright direct light, as that can cause damage to the leaves, as it can with many of the house plants. So when it comes to fertilisers, as these are leafy plants, they do benefit from a plant feed occasionally. It's really easy, just like you might do with your other houseplants in your collection. Give them a plant feed every 3 to 4 weeks. I generally use an all-purpose water-soluble one and add it into the watering every 3 to 4 weeks, and only use that during the active growing season. And just like most of the plants with winter care, stop fertilising, as you would limit the watering as well when it comes to the winter. So when it comes to temperature, given their natural habitat and the warmer climate they come from, they do like warmer temperatures, but that should still be within the sort of range that our homes would be in terms of temperature. So between 16 degrees to about 25 degrees, give or take a couple of degrees. And the main thing with these is they like consistency, so put them in a spot where the temperature is consistent. Avoid putting them in places where the temperature might change, maybe by windows or doors where there's a lot of footfall and drafts and things like that. They won't be very happy with that, and that can cause issues with the foliage and cause stress to the plant. So keep them in a consistently warm spot in your home. If you do have any cold snaps or anything like that, where the temperature does change quite dramatically in your home, you might want to move them around depending on the seasons and the climate that you're in. So consistent, warm temperature within that sort of range that I've given. Now when it comes to humidity, they do actually like higher levels of humidity than we might usually have in our homes. However, they should still be okay with those levels unless you've got a really dry home, maybe if you have the heating on a lot or aircon or something like that. So they could benefit from some additional steps to give them some extra humidity. So it could be putting them amongst other houseplants for that localised humidity, and again, as we've mentioned, in their natural habitat, they're under canopies of trees, they might like being amongst other plants to again filter some of that light out so they're in their best light position. But also you could invest in a humidifier, for example, which would benefit these as well as probably many of your other houseplants. If you want to increase your Aglaonema collection, you can propagate them really easily using division and stem propagation. So with stem propagation, you can use the soil or water methods, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and I'll show you that in just a second. You can also use the division to either divide up the plants if there are separate plants in the pot, which is often the case when you buy them from garden centres or nurseries, for example, or they actually spread in the soil as they grow and develop. New shoots will start to come off. So as they develop in the pot over time, you might then decide to divide them by cutting some of those bits off that have roots and their own bits of growth on them, and then potting them up separately, either as a direct propagation exercise or when you repot them to pot them up, you might take some bits to pot up separately and multiply your collection. As with any propagation, there are a few things that you need to get started. So first of all, your plant, a healthy plant that you are propagating, and then you will want to select a healthy piece of stem, in this case, that we will be propagating. And it's good practice to give the plant a water shortly before any propagation so that the piece can take up any water that it needs, as obviously it's not going to be able to do that effectively when it is cut from the plant for the propagation. And then to cut them, you need some clean, sterile cutting utensils. Scissors, knife, secateurs will be fine. And if you're using the soil method, fresh soil in a pot that's fairly loose as well, so it helps with that root development. And if you're using the water method, then just some clean water in a clean container. Clear is always good as well, so that you can actually see if it's developing roots over time. And then lastly, it's optional to use rooting powder or a natural alternative to help with the development of roots or to prevent any nastiness from getting in there as well. So this is optional, you don't need this, but you can use it if you want to try and increase your chances of propagation success. So when it comes to propagating Aglaonemas from stem propagation, it's slightly different from other houseplants where you would usually take the stem, remove the lower leaves, put it in water or soil, and then the roots grow around that leaf node or where the leaf was previously. So this is slightly different in that the leaves fan off from the stem, and then when they're removed it almost looks like the stem is made up of little sections, and underneath those leaves they will develop little nodes which can produce more growth, whether that's new leaves or new stems. And I've actually got one coming up just here which is going to be a new leaf or a new stem, and that's where the roots will grow as well. So that's what we're looking for when we're taking the propagation. So if it has grown up and some of the lower leaves have gone, then you might see, if I bring that closer so you can actually see it on the stems there, the little sections of the stem here, and you'll see there's little bumps along it which will develop into potentially new growth, new leaves, new stems. But if I cut that there, that's where the roots could potentially grow from as well when it's in soil or water. If I just turn this slightly, and again you should hopefully see this one where I said it's already growing off, this is where it's starting to develop a new leaf or a new stem just there. So again, if I wanted to, I could always cut that there and propagate that, and then just as I mentioned, the leaves fanning off. So if I was to take this as a propagation, what I might do is then remove these leaves, and then hopefully under there should be some of those little grow points. So looking at this smaller stem down here, this is the one that I think I would take for the cutting. So I can feel there is a node just there, and then there are also further nodes further down the stem as well. So what I might do, if I cut that there, then I can use this as the propagation, and I should hopefully start to see new growth from further down that stem where those other points are. So what I'm going to do is put the scissors in the space underneath the node there. So on this one, the node is just under that sort of brown patch on the stem, and if I cut that off, and that's just fallen on the floor, so I'm just going to grab that quickly. So here is the stem propagation that I've just taken off that Aglaonema, and I've also removed one of the leaves that was on the bottom of it too. So we've got a few good leaves on here and a nice piece of stem as well, and then on that stem I've got a node that I can feel just there. If I just bring that closer, and it's the sort of brown area where the node is, the little bump on the stem, and that's where hopefully we'll get some roots. So all we need to do, just as we would with any propagation, is if we're doing the water one, put it in water, and then refresh that water occasionally just to keep it clean, wait for roots, wait until they're 1 to 2 centimetres long, and then you can pot that up. Or if I was doing the soil propagation, I would do exactly the same as I would with any soil propagation, make a slight hole in the soil and then put them in the soil, and again wait for any root development, any signs of new growth, or that they're anchored in the soil. Keep that soil moist but not overwatered. As we said earlier, they don't like too much water, and then that will hopefully keep them happy to give us a successful propagation. There are some things that you can do to increase your chances of success with Aglaonemas in particular, although again some of these work with other propagations, other plant propagations. So put them in a warm spot where they will get consistent warmth, which will help the root development. So maybe on top of an appliance, a fridge, freezer, something like that, that just generate warmth throughout the day, or even a propagation or heat mat that you can buy inexpensively, and then that'll hopefully help get the roots faster. Then when it comes to humidity, they will also benefit from additional humidity, so if you can, maybe put them in a clear plastic bag so that that will help to maintain the humidity around them. Or if you've got a storage container, a plastic storage container with a lid, a clear one, that's also a good option. I know a lot of people use those as propagation boxes for all of their different propagations because they do hold humidity really well. And then also the last thing, lighting. So give them bright indirect to indirect light. A good light source while they're propagating will also help them to hopefully successfully propagate and develop roots faster. And the last method is division, and this is a great way to propagate your plants, as you can increase your chances of success because you're propagating plants that will already have pieces of root on them and pieces of growth on them, as you're just separating them out from what's already growing in the pot. And it can help you increase your chances of success by helping them to establish faster, unlike stem propagations and leaf propagations, which have to wait to develop roots. So with this one, I actually dropped this off the desk, unfortunately, and there's a little bit of damage to the leaves just there, but hopefully I can't see too much damage, which is great, but it did lose some soil, so this is probably the best example to use for division because I've already lost a bit of the soil, which I need to clean up in just a second. So I've got, actually looks like there's 2 separate plants in there, but I'll just show you what I'm doing and how I would separate them. So all I would do, again, just like you would with any plant that you're propagating via division, is take it out of the pot so that you can get to the soil, and then all you need to do, I've just put a tray down on the desk just to save some of this soil, is remove as much of the soil as you can from around the roots. So there's quite a lot of roots on here from these 2 pieces that are in the pot, and they don't look like they're too tangled either, so I've probably done this at the right time. They're not root bound, they're not stuck together, so they shouldn't cause any issues where I need to cut them, although that is still an option if you need to, as long as you don't damage too many of the roots. I'm just going to gently tease these 2 pieces of plant, as you can see there's 2 in there, apart, and see if they are totally separate or if maybe they are connected further down. As I said, as the Aglaonemas develop, they do spread in the soil, so they could still be part of the same plant. Just need to loosen some more of that soil up to get it off. So with this one, this was actually 2 separate plants in the pot, which is often the case when you buy from a garden centre or nursery. You will often find they put more than 1 plant in the pot to make it look fuller. Then you can separate the ones that are already there, and there's generally no risk, other than disturbing the plant, there's generally no risk, as you're not splitting the plants, actually physically cutting them at all, because they've already got roots and the pieces of plant growing on top. So these have got fantastic root systems on them, so I could pot these up separately if I wanted to in slightly smaller pots, or just put them back together again. So if I was dividing this as a plant that was spreading in the soil, because they do spread in the soil and develop those new stems, if I was doing it with this one, for example, if I bring that a little bit closer so that you can see, this that is coming up here is an offshoot of the main stem. This is only a tiny piece of stem at the moment that started growing off. So if I was separating this as a division, I would take this out of the soil much in the same way, but then it would be connected to the mother plant in the soil. Providing this bit has got roots on the bottom, like these, maybe not as big as these, it's only a small piece of plant, but providing this has also got roots of its own, I could then remove it by cutting between the mother plant and this piece of stem, and then this could be potted up by itself. So now that I've actually taken these out of that pot after dropping it and losing some of the soil, I've got this pot of fresh soil, so I'll probably put these back in together but put them in a bigger pot, and that might be beneficial for them actually because they've got quite a lot of roots on them. So maybe these will start to show some new growth, new stems and so on with a little bit more room in this new pot. Now I did say that these plants don't like to be overwatered, and my previous video was all about avoiding houseplant watering mistakes, so if you'd like to watch that next, I'll link it at the end. If you have any other tips for caring for Aglaonemas, then please do put them in the comments below. I'd love to see them, and you'll be helping out other viewers too. If you have found this video useful, then please consider subscribing, and I'll have new videos every week, usually on a Sunday. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll respond to everyone, and as always, thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.